Absolutely. So we start the funnel very big at the top with our leads, with people that are interested in service or products. Then it narrows down to the actual decision makers. Then it narrows down to the pitches of whoever you pitch from those decision makers. Then it narrows down to the juicy stuff, such as sales.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
And we're back with the podcast on podcasting, POP for short, P-O-P. I'm excited because I've got Romina Muhametaj on the podcast. And just so you know, the best way to connect with Romina is to go to connect with Romina and you just put .com at the end and you are there. You can see her podcast. You can see her business. She has a podcast post-production company and she's growing that. And what's kind of cool, maybe actually, Romina, I think you're a better person to say the reason why you started the podcast than me. I would not even do it justice. So why don't you take a second to just say, Adam, this is my podcast. This is where you can get it. And this is kind of my journey, why I started it.
Absolutely. Well, first off, hello to the audience. Romina here with a weird last name. Don't even try to say it, but Adam, you said it perfect. So I do have a podcast named RM Podcast FL. And you might wonder, what in the world did you do? Why did you name your podcast like that? Well, the reason why I even started the podcast is because I wanted to run away from my job and my anxiety issues that I was having. And I felt like a machine. Well, I'm sure somebody has felt like a machine at a certain point in their life that just feels like they're doing so much but not getting anywhere. So I was sitting across from the table with my brother and I said, how about I start a podcast? And I made the logo on my phone. And he said, yeah, that's funny. Well, I reached out to a couple of people on LinkedIn and I was like, hey, I have this idea. How about I interview you and bring it on the podcast platform? Well, one interview led to the other and one interview led to the other. And over 62 countries later, over thousands of downloads later, and 90th episode launched, and we have a lot more in the production. We just recorded earlier, actually, the 122nd episode. So it's been a journey, but the reason why the name of the podcast is so simple, and that's why I'm hesitant to even change it, is just because whenever you have an idea, just take action. Just do it. Even if the name at first, it's not impressive whatsoever, you would be surprised at what that project can take you. Because a year ago, I was able to quit my corporate job and launch my own business, my marketing business, launch my own online courses, have my own clients, just because I hated my job and I wanted to launch a podcast and run away from my reality. And here we are today.
What we're going to be talking about, what you're going to get out of today, hopefully Romina can deliver. What you're going to get out of today is we're going to be talking a little bit about funnels. We're going to be talking about how to use funnels. We're going to get into some of the psychology of persuasion and negotiation from people that she's had on her podcast and learned from them. And so this is going to be a lot of fun. You're in for a treat. And I need to actually, you remember how I had to make you a co-host, Romina? I made you a co-host so you could show me your screen for a second. Well, when I did that, it blocked out my whole chat. And so I was a little behind. So now I got my chat back open. I figured it out, but I had to pause in order to do it. Here we are. Sales funnels, leads to decision makers to pitches to sales. We're going to talk a little bit about this. I'm wondering if lead magnets are a part of it. Yes or no? Just all you need. I'm just curious if that's a part of the direction we'll go or not.
Yes and no at the same time. No, because we're talking about leads that you already will get, but also at the same time through the system itself, we're going to teach you how to build a referral system and we're going to teach you how to get those leads keep coming your way because word of mouth, that's like the biggest referral and the best referral you can get sometimes. That's how Zappos even start breaking up to begin with and Amazon. So that's what we'll be able to tell you through this, the leads, decision makers, pitches to sales, and then the referral system. So a little background, I do come from a sales background. I've worked B2B, business to business campaigns at a very young age, as well as B2C. So I've worked construction sales, automotive sales, door-to-door sales, the fancy word for B2C. And this where the system is built is based on all the experiences that I've had, and all these tactics are modified in a way that will help you build not only your sales profession, but even if you're an entrepreneur and you use these skills, that's how you'd be able to convert those leads into contracts later on too.
I want to cut you off to ask a question just before we get in, because as you were doing your intro and your bio, you talked about how you were in 62 countries. You talked about how you had launched 90 episodes. You talked about how you had recorded 120 episodes. You talked about guests, and you talked about referrals to keep people coming. And so I've got a few questions before we actually dive into the topic, just to get a little bit of background. Number one, how do you know that you're in 62 countries?
From the hosting platform, we'll actually give you the details of it.
Perfect. Number two, if you've recorded 120 episodes, why do you have so many that are waiting to be published? And I don't say it is a bad thing. In fact, I like to have a huge amount myself. But I really think that the listener is just like, huh? She's got 120, like, get with the program, publish the episodes already, you know? So, yeah, how come there's only 90 out when you've recorded 120?
Yeah, great question. So I don't just do a podcast in my life. I do a lot of other things in my life, even though I have my team that helps with the podcast production. The best thing in order to run a successful business is you always need to think next quarter, next quarter. So what I did in November and December, we went crazy in recording the episodes in order to make sure 2021 strategy was built up successfully. So we can double the listeners, we can double the audience that we're reaching, as well as we're exploring a lot more with more diverse conversations. And it's a funnel. I mean, I don't know if you probably run into this. I run into this sometimes. If I record an episode and we do all the editing, it might not be the best content out there that would definitely transfer your mission and your vision. So sometimes we hold back on those episodes as well. Or we might find a better time to, for example, if there's a current event going on, or Earth Day, for example, on April, we're actually scheduled an episode to talk about the environment. So you have to also align those things and think more strategically, not just record and launch.
Okay. I think that that is brilliant. And I'm glad that I asked the question. First, wanted to find out, you were saying, if I remember correctly, when you started to record the podcast and you were planning to do it, you drew the logo on your phone with your brother. Then you went to LinkedIn and started reaching out to some people. And then the next thing that I remember you saying is one interview led to the next interview over and over and over. And I want to understand what that meant. If you were asking the guests that you were having on the show if they would give you your other interviewee, or if you were just on your own, just finding interviews and you were just doing them over and over. So when you said one led to the other, I was wondering, does that mean that she's having her guest give her next guest, or what?
Yes, so great question. When I very first started, I was able to connect with the professionals here in Jacksonville, Florida that I knew personally from over the years of work. And I was telling them this is the mission. They agreed to it because they trusted me. But what would end up happening is whenever I would do an interview, it's a lot of research that actually goes on the back end. So if somebody has written a book or if somebody has their own company, I try to do as much research as possible because the interview is dedicated just to you. The questions are dedicated just to you. So the interviewer, the guests were so satisfied, and I would ask them at the end of it, say, hey, what did you think of it? I'm always open to criticism if there's something that you think I should change on my interviewing style. But they were so happy with it, again, because my sales mind, it's always working into getting the next lead, getting the next lead. So whenever they'd say, I'm so satisfied, it actually was one of the best interviews I've done, I would ask them, say, hey, do you have anybody on your professional circle that you think would be great for such a podcast? And they would just go ahead and refer me a friend and another professional. And to one point that I got a list of over 200 people, professionals that have been internationally, like on different channels, on different Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, everywhere, and wrote New York's best time sellers, that because I asked that question, they were able to refer to me. And what I also do is do an introduction call with my guests. to make sure that our energy align, make sure that, this is what I stand for, this is what my podcast stand for. Are you down for it? So this way you build that relationship, and it's not just a one-time done episode. I have relationships with my guests. They long term they turn into clients, or they turn into side projects, or they would refer me to work for, one of their friends if they need help with something that I specialize on. So it's relationship building. It's very important whenever you're trying to get the next guest and to get the next guest.
Speaking of guests, I want to find out, if you can't share it live on the air, that's okay. But I want to ask, can you share with me your best guest experience you've ever had and your worst guest experience you've ever had? Whether or not you can share names or details, but I'd really like to show the listener who my listener is a podcaster themselves, or they're about to be a podcaster. And I want them to be able to think to themselves like, man, what is a high up? What's an uppy uppy? And what is a downy downy? So best guest experience and worst guest experience, if you can.
Yep. So I'm not going to mention names, but we all had a really good experience and a really bad experience. Let's start with the bad one, and then we'll end it on a good note. So the bad one, I would say it has not published, and there's a big reason behind it, because such a guest showed themselves as the expert on the field. And I checked out the website, I read the book, everything just sounded really great. I don't know if they were having a really day off or what happened, but whenever I would ask questions and have a conversation like this, every sentence would start with, I'm not sure about this, but I think you should go this way. I think that's right. Such things that whenever you are the expert of the field, you definitely don't want to say, I think so, I'm not sure about this, but this. And what I came to find out is I asked them to record it because this was an issue. And they got very offended by it. And I said, I definitely want to bring an amazing podcast to my audience. Unfortunately, I cannot publish this. And it was a lot more, and it was just not the right energy. And it looked like somebody had taken the guest, put it in the chair and be like, you have to do this. It's one of your things of to-do list. And that's not what podcast hosts are looking for, because we interview and we meet thousands of people. That's not what we're looking for, because if you're boring on the interview, the audience is going to be bored and will never tune into the podcast ever again. Because one podcast can either make your podcast or break your podcast. So you have to think very strategically of it. And one of the best ones that I've had, it was with an interview that I did recently. It was about 40 minutes long, but I literally took so many notes just as a guest myself that I feel like that whole interview should have been a class or a course that people need to go ahead and digest and re-listen to the episode, because it was very detailed. It was talking from consulting, how to convert it to sales, how you convert it to the whole strategic planning, how do you actually put your articles into a book, and how do you publish the book to build your consulting firm. So it was very, very detailed and very informative.
Fantastic. What we're going to do is we're actually going to take a quick break for our sponsor. Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, growyourshow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money, to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show. All right, we're back with Romina, and I'm sure you're just wondering, what is a funnel? What are they even talking about? So Romina, let's just start with that question. What is a funnel?
Absolutely. So a funnel, a sales funnel more specifically, would be the narrowed bucket that you see whenever you see, for example, 1,000 people being interested in X product or services, but then you end up having only 3 people actually signing a contract or purchasing it. So through the whole process, from the leads to the actual sales, that is a funnel that people go through, and it narrows down as you get to the final sale.
Okay. And you mentioned something about fruit in the break. What did you mean about fruit? People are oranges, or orange, you glad I didn't say banana again? What was it?
Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, growyourshow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money, to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show.
So I love this comparison because coming from the sales world, how I look at the customers, and just stick with me here, okay? How I look at the customers is, are they apples, oranges, or coconuts? Because marketing experts, whenever they push marketing campaigns out there, they know specifically what percentage, and this is a number, it's 10% of the people are apples. Those are the easy buyers. As soon as it's out there, they just want it. It's new, they don't care. It's alpha or beta, they don't care. They just want to buy it. That's 10% of the people. And it's compared to an apple because you just wash it, you bite it, and you just enjoy it. You don't have to put work into it. Now, the 80% of the population are oranges. The reason why they're oranges is because those are the population that need to do a little bit of research. They might have an objection. They might need to ask around. They might wait a year till you improve your product. And that's when they're going to buy it. So the 80%, that's when you need to get really, really good at your sales and what you do, because that's the majority of the population. The reason why we call them oranges is because, like an orange, you just have to peel them back a little bit. But then you just enjoy the juicy fruit on the inside. Just a little bit of work. And then the last one is the 10%, which is the coconuts. I don't know about you, but I tried to open a coconut one time and I kept banging on the concrete and it took me 2 hours only to be able to break it finally, and just the juice just spilled everywhere. So those are the type of population that I can literally tell you, Adam, I will give you a car, a 2021 car. You'll pay the same car note. You'll pay the same insurance. Nothing will change as inexpensive for you, right? But you'll just get an upgraded version. But you hate change. Your body itches whenever it's applying change. You're just not comfortable with it. That's 10% of the population, the coconuts, which marketing people already know that, and they try to avoid it. So we need to focus on the first 10% because those are easy sales. I mean, who doesn't enjoy an easy sale? But the 80%, that's when you need to practice and get really good at, because that's where the sales come from all those leads that you get, pretty much.
And I'm sure you have to answer certain questions, establish certain types of credibility, show them what it kind of looks like to work with you, or else you'll probably fail. And so in order to peel an orange, again, apples, you don't have to do any work. You can just eat an apple.
You just throw the clothes and they'll sign it.
Yeah.
You say, here's the pen, just sign it, and they'll sign it.
And oranges, you don't have to do that much work, but you got to do it a special way. You got to pull the skin off. You have to understand how it's done. But once you do that, it's not a big deal anymore. You know how to open an orange. And coconuts, I think I banged one against my head because I saw someone do it on a cartoon, and it didn't work. It hurt a lot. And you said that you were trying to open a coconut once and it like spilled. Once you finally got it, it just spilled.
I was really bored,
right.
yeah.
So I love it. So I guess what we're going to say is we're focusing on oranges. For this funnel today, we're focusing on orange. We're focusing on how to answer the right questions, how to establish the credibility, and what is the process, and maybe the psychology of persuasion that's going to allow us to be able to open an orange like it's not a big deal anymore. Yep, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So with that said, what are the steps of a funnel? Just outline what these steps are, because you're saying at the top it's big, and the middle it's medium, and at the bottom it's narrow. And if you can get an orange through the funnel, then it's going to be delicious. So what are the steps? What's the top, middle, and bottom?
Absolutely. So we start the funnel very big at the top with our leads, with people that are interested in service or products. Then it narrows down to the actual decision makers. Then it narrows down to the pitches of whoever you pitch from those decision makers. Then it narrows down to the juicy stuff, such as sales. So it just narrows down from, you go from leads to decision makers to pitches to sales. That would be the funnel.
And when you were sharing your screen earlier before we were really recording, you mentioned that even though there's 4 parts, there's 3 like active parts, right? There's one part where you need to take one person from something to the next. Is that accurate? Like your goal is to move them from leads to decision makers.
Correct.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So you said leads, decision makers, pitches, sales. Those are the 4. And out of the 3 active steps of the funnel that you're supposed to do, one is to take them from leads to decision makers. One is to take them from decision makers to pitches, and one is to take them from pitches to sales. So what I want to start with is just that very first step. Actually, even prior to the first step, how do you get leads? Before we even talk about moving leads to decision makers, where are you finding leads? How are you getting leads? Like, who are leads? What is a lead? Let's start there. How do you get a lead?
Absolutely. So depending on the service or the product that you sell and your marketing strategy, personally, I get leads through my referral system and through my connections because that's how I handpick my lead. But typically you'd get leads anybody that would be interested in a service or a product or they can benefit from it. They are considered a lead. And how you can get leads in the digital age, it would be through an email tracker or it would be through, through ads, through paid ads, through advertising. There's multiple ways to get leads.
Okay. And once you have a lead,
Mm-hmm.
your goal is to make them a decision maker.
To qualify them, to make sure that they're decision makers.
Okay. What's the process of doing that and some psychological tips and tricks and strategies and negotiation? What is everything you can tell me in 5 minutes or less, how to go from lead to decision maker?
Absolutely. So like we said, a lead is anybody that can benefit or be interested in a service or a product. But that doesn't mean that it can absolutely purchase it because you can find X product very interesting, but doesn't mean that you are the perfect person to buy it. But it might be a friend of yours, for example. So that's when you take a lead to the decision maker. You need to make sure that, especially for people that are working directly with the leads themselves, like over the phone or in person or over Zoom, we need to make sure we're talking to the person that makes the final call for the sale. So this way you don't end up wasting your time because time is money, and make sure that you're giving them the proper information for the product or the services. Ways how to do that is to make sure you get that instant communication because you take 3-4 seconds to make a first time impression, and you can make a first time impression only once. Just have an amazing icebreaker. One of my go-to icebreakers is in person if I see somebody that has a tattoo. I compliment their ink. And I say, hey, why did you get this? It's really pretty. Like, what made you get this tattoo? And if you ask people about the tattoos, you would be surprised. We can talk for hours. Or over Zoom, what you can do is, for example, if you see somebody with a different last name, or you Adam Adams, be like, oh, that's such a cool name, man. Like, your parents did that intentionally? And then now we can spark a conversation for it. Or if you look at my last name, it's weird, right? Not a lot of people can say it. So right away you can say, out of curiosity, where's the last name from? And I'll say Albanian. And now you can just very easily ask me, be like, are you from there? Okay, I gotta ask, what's your favorite dish in Albanian that I must try? So we're not talking business. We're building relationships right now. And now we're already friends because people buy from people they like at the end of the equation. So that's how you'd be able to build that relationship. And instead of having that bracket get very narrowed down, you're opening it up because you're getting more personable with the decision maker. And if they're not the decision maker, well, guess what? They like you so much, they have a friend, a colleague, or a neighbor that they will tell them about you, your services, or your products. And that's why that bracket is very important.
And so how do you know if they are a decision maker? Is there something you're doing to qualify them? Like, is there questions that you ask? Is there forms that they fill out? What do you do to make sure that they're going from a lead to a decision maker?
Absolutely. And then once you build that relationship, you can ask the qualifying questions to make sure you're not dealing with a double decision maker, for example. Questions can be as such, if we agree to the terms and conditions of such a product, are you the person that makes the final decision? You can very openly ask that question. That will automatically give you the yes or a no.
Let's say for you, in your experience, you are currently kind of serving in 2 different ways, if I understand. You have a marketing agency and you also help do podcast post-production. Is that right?
Correct. And I also have the online courses, yes.
And the online courses. So you're striking up a conversation with somebody, get together, a bar, whatever it is. You're talking about their last name, you're talking about their tattoos, whatever it is. There's got to be a step before, because it just seems like it would be awkward to go from where did you get your ink? What does it mean? To are you the qualified decision maker? I'm wondering if there's a piece in between that you just kind of find out that they might be somebody who could work with you, who it might be a fit prior to you asking them if there is a lead. And I could have missed it, but is there a piece like that? Or in your experience with the way that you teach the sales funnel, is there a piece where you even know if you're a good fit for them? Is it like, I have an idea. I'm wondering, is it like this? You're talking about tattoos and they just say, Romina, what do you do? And you say, oh, I am a marketing person, or I help people with podcasts. And then you get them to bite and say, oh, really? I've always wanted to start a podcast. Is that kind of like part of the conversation?
Right there. So I know you're a decision maker. You always wanted to start one. So that means that you're the person I should talk to about starting one.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And so now you know they're the decision maker. What do you do to give them your pitch? You find
Yes.
out that they're the right person. Now it's time to pitch. So how do you do that transition?
Well, before you even pitch, you need to make sure that the discovery is done properly, because you can pitch 101 products, but that might not fit them. And
Okay.
also, as a marketing expert, as an entrepreneur, we always modify packages for our clients too. Maybe in a business that, it has certain set products or services, that's when you ask the discovery to make sure that what you sell can even help them, because you definitely don't want to push a sale to somebody when they cannot benefit. So that's where the discovery comes to play. You ask questions such as, well, for example, let's role play, right? Like you said, I always thought about a podcast. Be like, oh, that's amazing. What made you think to start a podcast?
Okay. I wanted to start a podcast because I don't think that I think your network is your net worth. And I think that if nobody knows who I am, I'm never going to get business. And I also just want to be able to connect with other professionals in the business and be one on one with them. So that's why.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you've already done a little bit of research, most likely, or a little familiar with what podcasting is and everything. And you got there right. Network is net worth. So it would be, still early on the stages, because we don't have thousands of millions of podcasts. We're still good and early in stages. I'd absolutely recommend you to start a podcast. What kind of podcast would you like to start? Like interviewing style or like solo style?
I don't know which one would be better for me. I would feel more comfortable probably interviewing other people, because if I'm doing it on my own, I feel like the burden of content is all on me.
Smart. Yes, that's very true. Because when you have a guest, you actually can get more content, be able to help others, again, network with a lot more other people. I think that's a great decision. Well, what I actually do, so I want to stop by before we do the role play. So right there, I did the discovery and I asked a deeper question, and I had him tell me why he wants to open a podcast. And I mirrored him. Network is net worth. You're absolutely right. And then I asked another question. Do you want solo or with guests? So now I know that you're in the market towards opening a podcast. I know you have this mentality of network is net worth. I know that you love to do guest interviews instead of solo interviews. Does that make sense? So
Mhm.
this is what the discovery is done. So now going from the actual pitch to sale, this is where I would be able to say, for example. So let's say I'm just going to pitch you just my podcast production services, right? And I'm going to say, Adam, I think you've come to the right person. I've been able to help multiple people throughout my lifetime with the podcasting. One of my clients actually asked me to stop doing ads on his podcast because he's getting so much more attraction and so many new requests that he's overloaded and he needs a vacation. So podcasting power is absolutely unreal. What I would love to do though, actually, is be able to get a one-on-one with you and maybe see what kind of business do you have right now and see what would be the best podcasting strategy for you. And this way we'd be able to get the podcasting rocking and rolling and be able to up your marketing and up your business to a whole nother level. What do you think would be a good time for you? next week at 3 o'clock on Thursday works good for you, or Friday at 2 o'clock? So we can get more to the
Friday.
nitty-gritty.
Friday, let's do 2.
Perfect. Awesome. I'll go ahead and send you a calendar invite, as well as I'll go over and send you some more information so you better know what we're doing in our end.
Perfect.
So let's stop right there for a second, right? I
Yeah.
did the discovery. I know what he wanted. I mirrored him. And then I put my expert hat on and I said, perfect, you've come to the right person. I Jones affected and told you I have a client that I've been able to help them like this. Okay? And now I also, throughout giving and hitting the hotspot, network is net worth, I hit the hotspot, something that he said he was interested in, and being able to demonstrate and build an impulse of what podcasting power can do for his business. Then I dropped the close when I said, what would be a really good time for you so we can sit down and talk more in details? That's where the numbers are going to be brought up to the table. When would be a good time? Is it Thursday or Friday? And he just told me Friday. So right now, I'm not at exactly sale, but on Friday, what's going to happen is I'm going to do a lot of research for Adam and be able to build a pre-strategy that we sit on Friday and I tell him I'll be able to do this and this for you. And that conversation is going to be short and to the point. And that's when you actually convert it and bring the numbers to the table and be able to convert that to an actual contract. I hope I explained that correctly.
Yeah, that's great. One thing that I want to deliver to the listener of the show is to think about their podcast as like part of the funnel, as part of them getting leads. I want to understand, you've got a podcast yourself, you've got a few hundred people downloading each and every episode. As you're publishing episodes for your podcast, you are probably wanting to do business with people that listen to your show, right? That's what I want my listener to do when they have a show. I want them to get leads and funnel them in. So if that's the case, what do they need to do, since we're not really talking about meeting at a restaurant or a bar or out and about, and maybe or maybe not, we're talking about them meeting on Zoom and seeing the last name. Maybe we are. But in general, let's just talk about the listener, because the podcast host is probably going to have like 100 listeners or 10,000 listeners or 1 million listeners to each and every episode. How do they use a funnel like this to take the people that are listening, get them on their list, get them in a conversation, and sell them or provide an opportunity for the listener to be part of what they're doing? And I know it sounds confusing to you, the listener, right now, because I'm talking about you as a listener sometimes on accident, and I'm talking about your perfect avatar listener as well. So I'm using that word a lot, but I want to talk to you, the person driving or working out, listening to this show, so that you can be a better podcaster. I want to talk to you about how can you convert your audience into paying clients. And Romina, what would you say would be that strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, you need to put your expert hat on and you need to place yourself as the expert on the topic of whatever you're trying to sell. Once you do that throughout the conversations that you have, and you might have a podcast through a guest or through a solo episode. This way, whenever you ask those questions or whenever you have those, for example, now we're having a conversation, whenever you say something, you definitely want to position the conversation in such a way to show somebody else, the audience, that you're the expert. And also be able to show that you would be able to help them with whatever you're the expert on. This would be happening towards the body of the episode. But something that you also need to make clear, for example, if you need to convert your audience to your client, you need to have a very clear call to action at the beginning of the episode. So call to action can be such as, this is the podcast for apartment investing show where, we would love to work with you if you need help or mentoring or one-on-one. Go to this website and just put in your list. We'll make sure to give you this information, for instance. That's a clear call to action. So now you have your call to action, but nobody's just going to give you away their email, because we live in a digital age that we get exploded with people's email. So you have the episode where you actually show why you're the expert and why should they actually listen to you, because that will give you a chance. And you need to make a very impressive episode, Because like I said earlier, one episode can make you or break you. So to kind of break it down, call to action, you're the expert on the area. Make sure that whatever you're giving to the audience, they know for a fact that you would be able to help them with whatever you're selling on your call to action.
Awesome, Romina. Thank you so much. That was really helpful, just kind of seeing how the listener's going to call them on action. I like that what you need to do is have a clear, concise CTA, I call it, call to action, at the end of the episode, or you could really do it anywhere, I'm sure. You could do it at the beginning, middle, end. But a lot of podcasters, they do it at the end. And I like how you said that you've got to have something of value because they don't want to just give you their email list because they get bombarded with emails. So it needs to be enticing enough that they grab it, that they want to connect with you. And then you do that, the rest of the funnel that you and I decided on or discussed today, where it's like bringing them from that lead and to make sure that they're the decision maker. And then doing what was the word that you used for it? Discovery, to understand if you needed to pitch them. And then you would give them the pitch and do the final close. One of my biggest things that I would say is a takeaway from this episode. So my favorite part is that as you were going through, that was a huge takeaway, how you had them pretty much sell themselves. Like the way that you asked some of those questions was actually pretty brilliant, to the effect of like, how are you going to do it? When you do it, are you going to do it this way or this way? And it kind of makes the person start to visualize them having the podcast. And it's like almost impossible once they own it, once they have the podcast, for you to take it away from them. They want which way they already have. And for you, you're just kind of like making sure that they totally are sold on it. It's like the way that you ask the questions. It's always, tell me how you want to do this. Tell me how you want to do this. Do you want to do it this way or this way? And that really helps. And I think that would be really beneficial for the listener as they get people from their podcast to kind of call them so that they can actually close the sale. So a lot of good stuff. I appreciate you jumping on the show. Remember, to the listener, the listener, you're going to go to connectwithromina.com to find her podcast or to connect with her. So thank you, Romina. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye for now.
If you're glad that you checked out the podcast today, if you got some value out of this episode, some actionable takeaways, I invite you to do one of three things. A, you could do a written review on Apple. Let us know what you think. Just an honest written review. B, you could share the podcast with a friend of yours who needs it. Or C, at the very least, implement what you've learned to take your business and your podcast to the next level. And I'll see you on the next episode.